I'm going back to some of this blue-gray shadow color that I had. It was my sky color. Remember I said earlier on I was going to save some of that for my snow shadows? So I'm thinking in terms of like little hills and gullies. So these are little shadow pockets within that snow. So I'm going to leave some white in there. Obviously, it's snow. But notice my strokes go with the lay of the land. This looks like it's coming downhill, so my strokes are going to kind of conform to that. If I came in and did something total opposite, it changes the lay of the land, which I could do that, but I think it's more pleasing to the eye to have that certain flow that's already kind of been established here. And see, I'm just kind of I'm scuffing, putting some lines in there. Now they're going to look kind of like lines and very linear, so I'm going to come back and soften those. Remember that white base coat we put on earlier, and I said it gives us softness where we want it? Well, that's where that's going to come into play. I'm going to take a little more blue into that blue-gray mixture. Just a little bit. I want to change the flavor a little bit. I want to go a little darker and a little bluer here in the foreground. That brings those shadows a little closer, makes this area look even yet a little farther away. Okay. Looking pretty good. I'm going to come back and soften this, which means I'm just going to wipe the brush. Did you ever think you could get this much mileage out of just 2 brushes? A fan brush and a 2-inch brush. I can do this whole thing. Painting doesn't have to be complicated. You can actually strip it down to some bare essentials, a few tools and a handful of techniques and a little bit of knowledge of perspective here and there, and you can actually do some really neat stuff. Okay, I'm going to make one little enhancement. I am going to come back with a clean brush. I washed my fan brush out again. This time I am going to take straight white. It will not stay straight white, and I know that because it's going to blend into some of the underpaint, but I want to go a little bit lighter right in here where I was establishing those trees as being a little more dominant, to kind of play up some sort of a center, not dead center, but a central area here that's going to be kind of a place to draw the viewer's eyes. I'll put a little more light down through the center here. See how that lightens that up just a little bit? Enough to kind of force a little more attention in here. All right. I think we better grab our parka. It looks like it's getting cold out there. I'm going to take a little bit of brown. I can go right into the same mixture that I had before. I'm just taking a little more of the brown into that, darkening it just slightly. Not much paint on the fan brush this time. I'm just tapping the ends of the bristles in. I've really got that brush exploded and widened out. I want to put a little bit of grass peeking up through here and there. So it's just a very light touch to create a little bit of stubble. Now obviously if you got snow that is knee deep, which many times up in my neck of the woods, out behind my house it is. When I break a new trail on my snowshoes and it's knee deep, I'm in trouble. It's a major workout. But if the snow is only maybe ankle deep or not much more than that, you're going to see, a fair amount of grass peeking up through. So you want to look at it realistically and logically. If you're thinking this is deep snow, you probably wouldn't want any grass in here. But I think it kind of actually helps it look even more like snow if we have a little bit of that grass peeking up through here and there. All right. I'm going to wipe my brush, and I'm going to mix up a much darker green color. I'm going to put some evergreens in here closer up into the foreground. Now this emerald green, like I said, is a very strong color, so you'll notice I'm taking more blue and brown and less of the green. Again, get a flavor that you like. It just needs to be darker. You could lean it more greenish. You could have a blue green. You could have more of a grayish green. It's all good. It's not the color so much as the value. Value means how light or dark a color is. So you want to get it dark enough. Now that looks really dark, but that's really good. That's what I want. Now to do my evergreens, let me show you here. I'll give you an evergreen lesson. What I do now, this board is dry, so it's not going to go. onto my canvas as easily as my wet one in the background. But you'll get the idea. What I do is I take the brush and I just find a vertical indication of where the trunk would be in that tree. And then I use just the corner. Now, to use just the corner, I can't go in straight like this because I get too wide. It's too much brush. I literally turn the brush like this so it's almost a side, almost like a 45-degree angle of the brush handle to the surface. And then I can get a much smaller little shape like that. The hardest part of the tree is from the top down about a third of the way. Most people have trouble keeping it narrow enough. As long as you keep it narrow at the top, you'll be in business. So see, I just take that corner and I'm just tapping kind of in a loose zigzag back and forth across that center line. As I run out of paint, I flip it over on the other corner where there's more paint before I have to reload. And I go out of my way to make sure it's not perfect. You don't want it to look exactly like a pyramid or a triangle. You want it to be, in and out on each side and staggered in different lengths. On some of the branches, some of them you can hang out a little longer like this. It's not going to be perfect, and it shouldn't be. Mother Nature's a great old gal, but she's not perfect by any stretch. So you don't want to make your trees look too perfect and too much like they've been pruned on the Christmas tree farm all year. All right, so that's the basic idea of that. Now, I know that looks easy when I do that, and it's because it is. It's only because I've done it so long. It does seem easy to me now, but you'll require some practice. Get yourself a piece of cardboard or an older piece of canvas panel, whatever, piece of scrap paper even, something to practice a few of them on. You'll find that your 5th tree will be better than your 1st, and your 15th tree will be better than your 5th. So the more you practice it, the more you're going to like it. Okay, I'm going to say right here. Now see, by this value being so much darker and there's going to be so much more detail in this particular tree, it's going to push this background far away. That's what I was telling you right from the outset. We want that to look a million miles away, so that's why I couldn't put too much detail out there. You have to just downplay your backgrounds. So that's what I've been doing all along to get to this point. This will really bring this out in sharp focus and give me a lot of depth on this flat canvas. All we're trying to do is achieve a sense of depth on a flat surface where there is none. Okay, maybe, what the heck, we'll put another one right here. Excuse me. Now I will eventually lay some snow on these, and I'm thinking I'm going to put some falling snow in. Like we've got a light snowfall coming down, which will kind of really pull this all together and finish it off nicely. Maybe just in the interest of composition, they always say don't put 2 of anything. So maybe if that's the case, rules are made to be broken. It depends on how you have your composition laid out. But I know if I don't do this, some of you are going to question it. So to stave that off, I'm just going to put a 3rd tree over here somewhere. See, I just tap with that same corner. A lot of people I see in class try to do the flippy flop corner to corner. You really don't need to do that. Just use the same corner. The key is in using enough paint. That's very textured. It's because I'm using a lot of paint as I do that. I'm not sure I mentioned it. I was talking as I was doing, but I inadvertently grabbed a little bit of that clear medium too, the fast flow clear, just to thin that down. It helps this paint stick to the thicker paint underneath. You're going to reach a point where you're layering paint on top of paint. It's going to be hard to get each layer to stick to each other. So if it feels like it's not going to stick, that's where you want to thin it down slightly. Okay, now this is kind of overcast, so there's not going to be a lot of sense of cast shadow. So I could probably forego this part altogether. But I'm going to, in the interest of just being a teacher, I'm going to show it to you. Let's say there's a little bit of light coming through from one side or the other. Let's say it's coming through from this way. If that's the case, I would need some sort of a cast shadow. I'll take some of this blue that I used earlier for the snow shadows. I need to darken it a little bit. So I'm going to take a little more blue, a little touch of brown, and just darken it down somewhat. Kind of a blue-gray. And if light's coming from here, it means the shadow from this tree is going to fall on the ground in this direction. Now this is going to look very harsh. These trees will cast a shadow, but since the land is going this way, the shadow will fall on the land uphill because that's the way the land is going. See, that kind of helps set those down and gives them an anchor. I'm going to wipe the brush off, and I'm going to come back and just soften that out. So it's a little softer, much more like a shadow.